righty, my name is Kim Hobbs. This is September the 9th on year 2007, and we will begin this interview. What is your full name, sir?
My full name?
Your full name.
William David Alverson.
Okay. When and where were you born?
I was born in Childress County, Texas, July the 24th, 1915.
What squadron were you in?
512th.
What was life like for you in the Great Depression of this country?
In the Great Depression? Well, if we got a hold of a quarter, we hung on to that sucker for a while. No, it's pretty rough. I was raised on a farm, and it's pretty bad.
Did you have much to eat? Were you hungry there on the farm?
No, we had plenty to eat.
Just didn't have any money?
Oh, plenty, that's right. Just not a lot of variety. Oh, we had quite a bit. We raised quite a bit of stuff and so on and so forth. We didn't suffer, except for lack of money.
What were you doing when you heard that Pearl Harbor had been attacked?
I don't remember for sure at all. I know I was at home. It happened. I expect I went to church after that. I know my folks did. I might not have, but I know, yeah. And that was a great blow. And I decided that I must go. I didn't have to. We were farming on a large scale at that time for that day, and I was the only help my father had left, except what he could hire. Well, and he asked me about what I wanted to do. He was chairman of the draft board there, and I told him I was going to go. And I just felt like I had to go.
Did you have any other family, any other brothers?
I had one brother, and he was already gone from home, and I had two sisters.
Your brother was already joined the service?
No, he never did go to service. He got into a motorcycle accident and almost got killed, and he couldn't qualify.
When did you join the service?
I joined in March the 11th, 1942.
What level of education did you have before you went into
I was a high school graduate.
Where did you join the armed services at?
Well, I was sworn in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I went to Lubbock, Texas to volunteer for Army Air Corps in February, and I forgot some paper that I had to have, and I couldn't volunteer. And when I got home, I had my draft notice, so I was drafted and got in the Air Corps. Good luck.
One way or the other?
Sir?
You got in one way or the other?
That's right, yeah.
What did you think of boot camp?
Well, it wasn't bad for me. I was used to exercise, and all that stuff. Some of the guys suffered pretty bad with their feet, but it didn't bother me at all.
Well, what different kinds of training did they give you when you got into the Air Corps?
Well, mostly lectures on this, that, and the other, and lots of marching.
Okay.
Said that was to get us used to taking orders, I said. And I didn't mind it at all.
Let's see, were you an officer or enlisted man?
No, I was an enlisted man, staff sergeant.
Staff sergeant, okay. What was your MOS or your specialty in the military?
Well, I was armor gunner. I believe it was a 612, I believe was the number. And they gave me, I never did go to armor school, but I was armor gunner.
Where did you went to armor school? Where was this?
I never did go to armor school.
Okay. Where did you receive your training at then?
Wichita Falls, Shepherd Field.
Okay. Were there any accidents that occurred there during training?
No, I don't believe so. I don't remember any.
What was your first combat mission like?
My first combat mission? Well, we had what you would call an easy one on it. We went to Novi Sad, Yugoslavia, and caught very little flak, no fighters, but lots of nervous sweat for the first mission.
What date was your first mission?
Yeah.
The date of your first mission?
I'll have to guess at it a little. I arrived in the bomb group on June the 21st, and I believe I flew my first mission on the 29th, 28th or 29th of June.
Which year, sir? What year?
Oh, 1944.
Okay. So your first mission, would you call that a milk run?
No, I don't think we had any. Comparatively speaking, yes.
Well, what was one of the toughest bomb sites that you had?
The toughest? Well, we had a real tough one on our second mission. We bombed oil refineries at Giurgiu, Romania, and we caught lots of flak, lots of it. And we had one fighter attack, which didn't hurt us. I don't think they shot down anybody that day, but I'm not sure of that. But in our squad, in our formation, I don't believe we lost any. But
What bothered you the most, the flak or the fighters?
I dreaded fighters more than I did flak, although you couldn't do anything about the flak. But I know that in all the time before me, the fighters shot down lots more people than anti-aircraft did. That's memories of a long, long ago.
Were you ever wounded? Were you ever wounded in one of your missions? Did you ever catch any flak? Were you hurt?
No, I never was hurt. We got one Purple Heart in the crew, and that barely bled. On our second mission, the pilot got a piece of flak on his shin, and it bounced up and hit him on the upper leg and made a red spot. The place on his shin bled a little, so he got a Purple Heart. Two of the other guys got hit later. One on the helmet, and it didn't penetrate, and another one on his flak suit, back of his shoulder. That made a red spot. That's it.
But the flak suit
That's
stopped
it.
it.
That was flak.
Okay.
Yeah. Nobody got hit by machine gun fire.
Well, what was your closest call of ever getting shot down?
Well, I guess that Giurgiu mission probably. We got one engine shot out, and we had lots of holes in the plane, and our landing gear was shot flat, and that was a rough landing. Both of them flat. That was worse than a Model T Ford on a dirt road, I'll tell you for sure. And I don't think that plane ever flew again. I'm not sure of that, but I don't think it was an old plane to start with.
Well, it sure got older when it landed.
Yeah.
Well, it said that there are no atheists in the foxholes. To what degree did your experience in the military or in combat affect your religious faith?
Now, phrase that again, please.
It said that there are no atheists in the foxhole. Did you ever get closer after your experience in combat?
I prayed more in the tail turret than I ever have in church. And I think most of the guys did. We said, "Ride with me, Lord."
Did your reasons for joining the military, draft or patriotism or adventure, did any of that change during your experiences?
No, it was patriotism, a mixture of patriotism and, adventure. Although I wasn't just a kid, I was 26 when I went in the Army. But there was still that sense of wanting to know what was going to happen, you know.
Did you receive any medals?
Just Air Medal and clusters and so on and so forth. No DFC or anything like that. Of course, the Good Conduct Medal.
Were you close to the other members of your crew?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were all pretty close. All 6 of us got along just fine. The nose gunner and I were the closest of friends for some reason. He was the youngest member of the crew, and I was the oldest. But usually when you saw one of us, you saw the other one.
Did you have nicknames for each other?
Yeah. Nose and tail. That's the way we dressed each other on the plane, and sometimes the other way. Hey, nose. Hey, tail.
Oh. Can you remember one good time that you had with the nose that stands out?
Yeah, several really, but a couple of times in town that we were in there together, and it can't all be told though, but he didn't drink or smoke. I did both. The rest of us did, but he was raised as a Christian kid too, and it stuck with him. He didn't curse, didn't smoke, didn't drink. He didn't care what you did, you know. No complaints. And he was one fine fella, and he died about 10 days ago. Just got word through his wife just the day I left home. Yeah, September the 30th. No, August the 30th.
Do you remember anything about your commanding officers, the commander of the squadron or the
Oh
commander
yeah,
of the group?
quite a bit. The commander of the squadron when I got there was Harry Gillette, and he didn't stay much longer. And we got John Snyder, and he flew with us several times as the commander. And Colonel T.Q. Graff was the group commander, and our pilot was more experienced than most of them were when we went overseas. He was a command pilot. Pretty soon, I guess after 10 or 12 missions, we nearly always led either the squadron or the group. And Colonel Graff flew with us quite a bit. And then he got a sabbatical, came back to the United States, and we had Colonel Fellows for a while, and then Graff came back. He was there when I left. He was a mighty fine fellow, in my opinion. He addressed us when he called us on the interphone as son. How's it going there, son?
Now, what base were you at this time? You were over in Italy?
Yeah,
At
376 bomb group, and down on the heel of the boot at a little place called San Pancrazio.
Well, what was discipline and regulations like at the base at that time?
Pretty lax. There wasn't much, as we called it, GI stuff. No, most of the officers, especially the officers that flew, didn't expect us to salute them every time we saw it, unless we had official business with them. They were pretty good comrades.
So they didn't ride on you, son?
Did they what?
They didn't ride on you, son?
No, they didn't ride on us at all. You were there, weren't you?
No, I missed that one. Well, what'd you do for fun when you weren't flying?
Played baseball. We had a guy in there named Simmons, Lieutenant Joe Simmons, that loved baseball. And if we were, let's go get up a game. And so we did. We played a lot of baseball until the weather got bad in the fall, and most of the time you had mud, so you couldn't play. A lot of guys' pastime was playing poker or shooting dice, but I didn't do much of either one. A little. Just enough to get a little experience, you know, and it can be pretty costly.
Did you ever have any USO shows come through there?
Let me think. I don't believe we ever had one come to the group. Right now, I can't remember it. we saw a lot of them here in the United States, all right, but I don't believe we did.
Well, can you describe what the guns in the tail looked like? How did you operate? What controls did you have in the tail gun?
You operated by remote control. You didn't have a hold of the guns. And an electronic sight and operate the, I don't know how to put it, but you could, and you had your triggers here on this sort of pistol grips.
Okay.
And you operated the turret and all, the guns and the turret and so on with these controls.
Now, were they moving by hydraulics or electronics?
I think it was hydraulic, but I'm not certain.
But by twisting the controls that you
I
moved?
think that was hydraulic.
Okay. Did you ever have any trouble with your guns freezing up on you?
Never did. Not a bit.
Were you in charge of taking care of the guns?
No, the armament crew loaded the guns, put in the ammunition, cleaned them, serviced them. I guess it was the crew chief's job, I guess, of the ground crew that took care of each plane. Now, they may have had more than one plane to take care of. I expect they did, but they took good care of them. They were always clean and ready to shoot. But I never did have to shoot them very much. By the time I got overseas, we had their transportation and their refineries in big trouble. You'd bomb those refineries time after time. Every so often you got to go get this and again. Railroad bridges the same way. But they were in big trouble for fuel. Mm-hmm. There was a big airfield up in the Udine area that we would fly fairly close to on quite a few of our missions. And at times, not one plane would take off. Not one. No fuel. And that was one more piece of luck I had on this. I went through training on B-17s in 1942, and we were ready to go overseas the latter part of December or early January of 43. And we were made an instructor crew, the whole bunch of us. And we were... So that was at Salina, Kansas. We were put back to Topeka until April, and then transferred to B-24s at Blythe, California. And that just made us sick, especially the officers. They'd heard some bad things about the B-24. To me, it was the best airplane.
You spent time in both and had a preference for B-24s?
I had the preference for the B-24. One reason, I guess, was because the tail gunner's position was so much better in the 24 than it was in the 17. In the 17, you were back there in this little rear end and very uncomfortable. In the 24, you got in this turret and you sat down there on a chair-high seat. Of course, it was hard, but it was so much better. And the B-24 could fly further, faster, with a bigger load than the B-17 could. And we referred to the 8th Air Force as the glorified 8th. Don't tell the 8th men that.
Well, I've heard it said that the B-17 came with a publicity crew that the B-24 didn't have.
Maybe so. They were the prettiest airplane, the B-17 was, but I don't think it was the best.
Well, what did you think of your view out of the tail section? Did you ever see any other planes shot down?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I saw 4 or 5 shot down, I reckon, over the length of time. Some of them by aircraft and some by anti-aircraft. But we never, I'll tell you, I saw, in all my missions, I saw one aggressive fighter attack in the group that I was in. That's all. Other time we would see enemy planes, and they'd never get to us because of our fighter support. We had the Tuskegee Airmen a lot, and we were glad to see them. They flew close support a lot of the time. Then we had P-38s, and we were glad to see them too. You knew what it was just as far as you could see it. And the P-51s, that might be a Messerschmitt. They looked quite a lot alike.
Were you able to talk to the Tuskegee Airmen? Could you hear the conversations?
No, we could. The pilot could up there on his command set. But as far as I know, the gunners couldn't. If we could, but never was given instructions on how to do it. And we couldn't hear the pilot when he was talking to them. He didn't talk to them very much. I remember one time when they came in pretty close. "Hello, big friend, how you doing?"
Well, how did it affect you to look out the back and see another 24 go down?
Oh boy, it made you feel good. You said, "I'm certainly glad to see those guys." You knew they were going to do a good job. The Tuskegee Airmen were out to prove that they were as good or better than anybody else, and they dang sure did it. It's told, I don't know whether it's quite true or not, that they never lost a bomber.
I think that was their claim to fame.
You've probably heard that, yeah.
While they were in charge. Did you have any feelings about some of your targets that there might be civilians down there?
Oh, yeah. I never thought about that until we bombed a troop concentration in Yugoslavia with frag bombs. And that made you're not going after property this time, you're going after people. And it gave you a different feeling, or it did me, and I'm sure it did the other fellows. But, you know, I'm out to kill a bunch of guys that's doing the same thing I am. They're fighting for their country. And I didn't feel too good about that. On the other, if you shot somebody down, he was trying to kill you. And you're allowed to protect yourself.
You bet.
Always.
Did you write any letters home during the war?
Sir?
Did you write any letters home during the war?
Oh, yeah.
How often did you do that?
Oh, about, I think I wrote my parents about once every week. I knew Mama was going to worry about her little boy.
How often did you get one back?
Just about that often. She was very faithful about writing. And I didn't have any girlfriends at that time, but I wrote some little bit to some of my cousins and a couple of friends. Didn't get as much mail as a lot of the guys did, but especially the ones with girlfriends. But I'd run fresh out when I left the States.
When was your last mission, sir?
Sir?
When was your last combat mission?
The 21st of December, 1944.
Where were you when you heard that the war was over in Europe?
I was at home. I'd already gotten out on the point system. I was sitting out on the front porch of my parents' house, and we got the word that the war was over. And, oh, man, that felt good. What a relief. Although I was already out, but there was plenty of people still in.
So you were still home when you heard about the war over in Japan? Were you still on the porch?
No, that's when I heard that the war was over with Japan. So I was at home sitting out on the front porch in the shade.
Do you consider yourself a hero because of your service?
No, I sure don't. I just did my job. and I don't feel like I got anything coming, nothing. And I hear a lot of the fellas talking about, they didn't get a DFC, because they flew 50 missions, and I think you should get the DFC for doing something kind of special. As far as I know, none of the crew ever got a DFC. The pilot might have, I don't know. But he stayed over quite a while after the rest of us came home. He was group, by that time, group operations commander, officer, and made lieutenant colonel.
What was your rank when you were mustered out of the Army?
When I was staff sergeant. That was the highest rating I ever had. And
what did you do after the war was over?
well, the first thing I did, I loafed for about 4 months, I guess, and then I bought a half interest in a large country store and service station with my sister and her husband, and I stayed with that 5 years. We also leased some land and farmed 3 of those years. And that, I learned right then that nobody should ever run a country store and live in it. Our living quarters was in the same big building as the store, and you're not closed unless you leave home. You can announce we're not open on Sunday. Some of your neighbors and customers knock on your door. Absolutely. You can count on it. You go in there to wait on one of them, and here'd come another. So we just buckle up and leave. After that, I bought a farm and farmed then after that until I retired. I sold that farm in 1990, and it was real good to me.
Did you ever slow down and get married?
Never did.
Did you ever get a
Never
girlfriend?
did get married. I'm one of those oddballs, I guess you'd say, that just never did make it. I never figured in my youth, well, clear up until I was about 50 years old, I never did think that I would be a bachelor. I said, well, one of these days I'm going to marry and maybe so get a kid or two and so on and so forth. And it just didn't. Along about that time, I said, well, you're not going to do it, old boy. You're just going to be by yourself. And it hadn't been too bad. I regret that I didn't, because I have actually nobody left to mourn your passing except this nephew and the widow of another nephew. And I still have one sister almost as old as I am, still living, and she is in a lot worse shape than I am. I'll probably outlive her by quite a bit. I'm shooting for 100 now. First it was 85 when I was 80, and then 90, and then I passed 90. I said, well, let's go for the whole ball of wax. I'm now 92, and in pretty good health.
Look good to me, sir.
Yeah. You can't beat that.
It says here, did you ever, after the war, when you got to thinking about things, was there a good part to those machine guns, or were there some weaknesses, things that they changed later and improved?
I don't know whether there was or not. It seemed to me like they were just doggone near perfect. Of course, sometimes they would misfire, although those in the combat planes that I flew in didn't. But on firing ranges, well, the instructions were give it immediate action. And usually it was okay. If it misfired for some reason, throw in another shell and it'd go. And in gunnery school, we didn't have any 50 calibers. And so I was there in April, I believe, in Tyndall Field, Florida. And we had 30 calibers mounted in the rear cockpit of AT-6s on a half track. And that's what we had on the ground. And there was quite a few trees not far from where the guns were mounted, and we would sit there and thumb off one at a time till we set that tree afire. I saw that. I didn't do it, but I saw several trees afire. No treasures. Well, it was all fun, you know. Mostly what I remember about the war was the good times, you know, and the worst times don't bother me. Never have. I never have had nightmares about any of the things I went through at all, and I never did mind. Well, not after the first 4 or 5 years, I didn't mind talking about it a little when people asked me questions. Some people just wouldn't talk about it, you know. And it seems to me that I don't have anything to tell. That's what I'd rated this this interview. And what do you got to tell, boy?
Son?
Well, I know some other people that felt the same way. Well, yes, you do. So what have I told you?
Well, when did you find this reunion group?
Where?
When did you get acquainted with this
Oh, in
reunion?
1985. See, I live in Del Rio and I had it that year in San Antonio. I don't remember how I found it out. It was accidental. So I went to that one, and one of my crew members was there, the bombardier, Glenn Miller, he and his wife. And I haven't made all of them since then, but I've made most of them, you know. The longest trip I've taken to go to one was in Seattle, Washington.
Well, that was one
And
of
I
them.
went by myself. That was in it was in 2000.
Yep.
2000. So I was 85. And I drove all that by myself. Now I wouldn't do it. I'm too far gone. I get lost now. I don't have much sense of direction. And some people would say, boy, you don't have much sense of anything. But I think maybe I do a little bit.
Well, we'll see how far they drive when they hit 92.
Beg your pardon?
We'll see how far they drive when they hit 92.
Yeah, that's right. Well, they say, you see, I believe someone said we've got a fellow here that's 94 and still very active. I don't know who it is. Do you?
Pete Konelich. Pete Konelich.
Okay, yeah. Well, I hope I'll do that. Yes, sir.
Well, have you found that it's been easier to talk since you come and get with these? Is it easier to talk to these veterans that know what you're talking about?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't have any problem. I always have been not an outgoing personality. I don't get acquainted easily with people. And I don't, that's not because of snobbery, it's just, I'm just that way. And other people never saw a stranger in their life. I never could be that way, and that might be the reason I never did get married.
Might be. You got to talk to them.
You got to talk to them. But on the other hand, if you talk to them too much, then you got to listen to them.
There's always a downside.
That's always some drawbacks. I'll tell you. My nephew comes to these reunions with me now. This is the third one. And he joined as an associate member the first time he went. And he knows more people now than I do. Absolutely. And he's 80 years old and a veteran of World War II, although he doesn't talk about it. He doesn't get in. He doesn't feel like he did anything. He got into the Navy on a V5 program, they called it. Went through physical training all right, but then he also got 2 or 3 semesters of college. That got him through college, you know. And I said, well, you did what you could. You're just too young. I wish I was in his place. He's 80 instead of 92. Not really. Not really.
Well, if you had 2 cents that you wanted to pass on, if some high school kid wanted to turn off his cell phone long enough to watch this video,
I don't
And-
think you'll find one. I'll turn that telephone off. You know, to me, that's one of the most ridiculous things I see. I go to the mall there in Del Rio pretty often, and it's everybody, old, and then kids no taller than that, running around with that telephone up there. Now, what have they got to talk about that's important? If you leave the house, you ought to leave that damn telephone with you. But that's their privilege.
well, if you had 2 cents that you wanted to pass along, what would you tell the boy watching this video?
I don't know what I'd tell them. I said, don't believe it. Take all this with a grain of salt, boy. No, I would tell them what they want to know about what I did. You know, I wouldn't hang back on it. I don't with anybody else anymore. If they ask me something, okay, I'll answer it. Not too long after I got home, one of my best friends got to question me about it, and the first thing I knew, I was all sweaty palms and shaking and sweaty armpits. Finally, he noticed it and quit asking me anything about it. But of course, I didn't have anything very bad to tell, but your nervous system absorbed all this, and it didn't bother you till it was over.
Yeah.
And I didn't know I was all that nervous, and I got through. By the time I got home, I was a nervous wreck. But that got me some good duty. I got into the convalescent hospital in Santa Ana, California, and lived the life of Riley for the last 3 months I was in. Good food, no extra duty, go to town every evening if you wanted to. I said, hey, this convalescent stuff's okay. But I'm glad we had it, and I'm glad I went through it, and I wouldn't do it again. All the tea in China. All those billions of dollars that Bill Gates has got wouldn't get me to do it again. Unless the old USA was in trouble. And like I say, I wasn't just a kid. I was nearer to 27 than I was to 26 when I went in. And I thought, now this might be my last opportunity to wear the uniform of my country. And that meant a lot to me. And I'll never forget my mother. David, why did you do that? I said, well, Mama, I got to.
Well, son, we appreciate what you did.
Well, thank you, sir. Weren't you in service?
No, my father was.
Okay. I thought all this time that you were one of us, but you're not old enough.
No, sir.
No. What is your age?
54.
54. Okay. That's a good year, I would say.
Well, my father didn't start telling me stories like you're telling until I got him to this group.
Uh-huh.
He didn't have nothing to say. If you asked him a story, he'd say, go find a hero.
Yeah.
But when I got him here with people like you didn't have to explain things.
Uh-huh.
Then he started visiting.
Well, I know there was an awful lot of people sort of say it like that. They just didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
You tried to question them about it, they didn't have much to say. Well, I never have had much to say about it, but I don't have a whole lot to say about anything. I'm a pretty quiet fellow. And one of the reasons for that, though, is because now I don't hear. Do you like it to at the church service this morning, I couldn't understand hardly any of what the preacher was saying.
Well, then you didn't have to feel guilty.
That's right. I didn't feel a bit guilty. Maybe he was talking about me. That's okay. And even when things are loud enough, I should be able to hear what's being said, and I can't. It just doesn't come in right. So I'm going to try to get something done about that when I get back. I want to try some more hearing aids and so on and so forth. And it's just awful to be around a group of people, you know they're having a good time, and you can't understand what's being said. And I can't think of but one thing that's worse, and that's not be able to see. Yeah. And one of my eyes is getting pretty bad. I'm gonna try an operation when I get home. But did you ever hear of epiretinal membrane?
That's part of your eye.
Yeah, it's a growth on the retina, and this one. So the doctor told me a couple of weeks ago, this one's ready to be operated on.
Well, before you turn 100, you
and
need
I'm
to have
going to try it when I get back. But there's always a danger of being blinded, of course, but it's, well, I still drive, but then I shouldn't, I don't imagine. But that makes me a lot more careful than I used to be. But,
well, I thought you was just careful because you was 92.
no. I think, well, I've been careful long enough. No, I did, although that influences me too. But I feel mighty fortunate. I never had much sickness in my life. I've never been in the hospital except when I was, that's not true either. No, I was in the hospital a year ago with pneumonia, a little over a year ago. But I was in the hospital a couple of times while I was over in Italy for sandfly fever.
Really?
And a cold that cost me 19 days on the ground.
Well, how do you get sandfly fever?
Get bitten by a sandfly. They were tiny little, half the size of a housefly. And there were several fellows that came down with that. I went on sick call. I felt just fine the night before. Got up the next morning, just burning up with fever. And I went on sick call. Yeah, sandfly fever, 105-degree temperature. We got to get you in the hospital right quick. I was in there, I believe, 7 days. But a lot of shots and stuff get you over it pretty quick. That's the first time I'd ever heard of sandflies in my life, and I've never heard it since, except when I was there. Maybe they're like grapes. Well, when we got there in June, the tents were just scattered out. They were in an old vineyard. Mm-hmm. That's what made me think about the sandflies needing grapes. That fall, when it started raining, well, they moved us up here on the ridge and put us in a company street. But that being scattered out there was okay. You could go AWOL if you wanted to. You wasn't very far from Sun Pine. Nobody'd ever miss you. Now, I never did do that, but a lot of the guys did. I was already old enough to know better. Well, I see. Yeah, I was 29 on the 24th day of July, and we hit Genoa Harbor on my birthday, my 29th birthday. And we missed the target by 10 miles. I don't know whether it was a malfunction of the bomb racks or the bombardier. He said it was a malfunction of the bomb rack, so I guess it was.
They wouldn't lie.
It wouldn't lie, of course not. He had a famous name, Glenn Miller, but it wasn't the musician, you know. But he was a one fine fella. We lost him in 2000. Lost he and the pilot both in the year 2000. One of the youngest members died in 1988. And he wasn't even 70 years old. And here I am still floating around. You just don't have any idea who's going to be next, and it may be me.
You pass the nose.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, we're glad you made it to this reunion.
Huh?
We're glad you made it to this reunion, sir.
I am too. I sure am. I enjoy them, although I don't get near as much kick out of it as people who are more outgoing than I am. But I plan to make the next one if I'm able at all. I was in Washington, D.C. for the dedication of the WW2 monument. That's 4 years ago, I guess. So I got to hear the speeches and all that. And you never saw so many ex-GIs in all your life. There were several 100,000 of us in Washington, D.C. And that's the first time I'd ever seen very much of D.C. I'd been there before, but just for a short time. And my nephew and I went up and stayed about a week and had a great time. And the Vietnam, bunch of them came while we were there, and a lot of them stayed in the same motel we were in, and they all had Harley-Davidson motorcycles. And they had one day, we had already left by that time, they had their parade. And there were several thousand of them in that parade. And they'd crank them up every day while we was there, and whoop again. But they were a bunch. I'd always heard some mighty bad things about the Vietnam guys. That's a bunch of crock. They're nice fellas. They might be pretty drunk when you talk to them and have a beer in their hand. They were courteous to us. They thanked me for being, for serving and all that stuff. Bunch of nice guys, and they got a rotten reception when they came home. And I guess that we never should have been there, I guess. What do you think about that?
Well, it's another story there where you had good intentions and it didn't go out.
Yeah,
Just like one of them missions where you went to the target but you missed it by 10
That's
miles.
right. You sure did.
It was one of those missions.
I'm afraid we might be in another one, but I hope not. So far, I've pretty well stayed with George on this. We're not got into that. We're not getting into politics now. But I know the next morning, after the bombing, destruction of the towers,
Mm-hmm.
I said, if I were 40 years younger, I'd run, not walk, to the nearest Air Force recruiting place. I'm kind of glad I wasn't young.
Well, we'll be looking for you next year.
I hope to make it. I sure do. And right now, I don't. It's hard for me to think of myself as being old.
I hadn't noticed.
You'll find that out, though, as you grow older. It's just, I just can't think of myself that way. And I feel good. I may live several more years. And I may kick out before the banquet tonight. And one day we never know. Thank goodness.
Well, if you're in Del Rio, when I head south, we'll come aggravate you.
Okay, we'll do that. I'm in the telephone book. most telephone books you look in won't have an Alberson in it, and I'm the only one in Del Rio. So evidently, it's a pretty uncommon name.
Well, you're kind of an uncommon fellow, sir.
Well, I hope so.